And lo did Athagivish of his arm, and place a chainsaw upon it, so that he could protect us all from the evil dead. Shop smart, shop S-smart, forever and ever. Groovy. That was a long way to go for that joke, folks, but I regret nothing. Yes, it is that time of year. Breaking out the Evil Dead 2 ugly Christmas sweater. I got some vegan hot chocolate here, and a really shitty movie. So all this comfort stuff here, I am definitely going to need it, because it's the one I've been dreading since the start of the season, folks. Merlin the Return. The movie, whose review by Diamanda Hagen and Film Brain made me aware of the genius that is Paul Matthews. This movie stars Rick Mayall, may he rest in peace, and Craig Schaefer, who, to steal a joke from Diamanda Hagen, is the guy you go to when David Boreanaz asks for too much money, Adrian Paul from the Highlander TV series, and Tia Carrere from the Wayne's World movies. So you have a star-studded cast in a complete and utter piece of shit. Oh yeah, and Patrick Bergen too. Anyway, let's just do this. By which I mean, let's survive Merlin the Return. Not watch, survive. There's no alcohol in this, by the way. Ooh, I should have let that cool down more before filming. And now I have watched Merlin the Return from 2000. Plot summary courtesy of Letterboxd. When Merlin cast a positive spell to protect the Knights of the Round Table, he used ancient magic drawing on the power of Stonehenge, and the knights were put into a sort of suspended animation. The evil Morgana and her son Mordred were banished into another world for 1,500 years, but a 20th century scientist finds a gateway, and the Dark Lord has a vicious scheme to enslave King Arthur's world. So, I decided not to rewatch the Hagen Film Brain crossover for this, before watching it, I mean. Was that a mistake? Am I going to end up repeating some of their jokes anyway? Will I make it through this movie without having to pause every several minutes just to groan like Tina on Bob's Burgers? In that order, no idea, maybe, and of course I will. This is a Paul Matthews movie. I mean, I do pause these movies on occasion anyway, since I write these what you can charitably call scripts as I watch the film. But sometimes something happens in a film I watch for this show that is just so mind-blowingly stupid, I need to just stop and take a moment. And we open on text, which pretty much just says what the plot summary says. This itself is fine. Many movies have opened on text passages. Thing is, in the cases where it works, there's usually something accompanying it. Music, the voice of one of the lead actors reading it dramatically, though that can be done poorly too. Maybe the text is overlaying an interesting background. But nope, none of that here, just words on black, and the music doesn't really start till, like, the very end. And it was also longer than it needed to be, really. Maybe I'm just a fast reader, I don't know. For the record, this is all just the first 40 seconds of the movie, and I've already found something to gripe about. Strap in, folks. Although, to be fair, yeah, when I did Love Lines back in season 2, that movie managed to piss me off in 10 seconds. So, props to Merlin to Return for not breaking that record. We start off with a magical ritual being performed, and without any warning, we're in some random psychic's house, and Mordred, played by Craig Schaefer, has taken over her body to talk to Tia Carrere, who I swear has never sounded this bored in any movie I've seen her in before. It's all stuff that relates to the plot summary, so I'm not going to dwell on it. Though I will dwell on the really stupid thing Schaefer is doing with his voice here. What the fuck is he doing? Is he trying to sound like a snake? If so, it sounds more like he really needs to quit smoking and get on an oxygen tank before he passes out. Taking in a hissing breath every few words doesn't make you sound menacing, bro. Well, I suppose it could if you were a better actor. Guinevere is here too, and she has what I really hope are not dreadlocks, because white ladies with dreadlocks, that's, that's not great. We go back to the modern world again. We switch back and forth a lot during the first act of the movie. We meet one of our child protagonists, and oh hell, not even 6 minutes in, I've already filled up a whole page of the script. That's not a good sign. I mean, there's stuff going on at least, so that's nice. But without context, it's just stuff. A bunch of people standing around, pratfalls, Merlin spying on Mordred, then getting caught and running away. Tia Carrera has some weird Skyrim-looking helmet. The psychic lady doesn't know that she's been possessed and thinks she's just failing to connect with Carrera's mother. And a chunk of this has taken place during the opening credits. Adrian Paul enters the picture here as Lancelot. He's attempting an accent, and he and Guinevere mention the name Maxwell as though we should know what it means. We learn later that that's Tia Carrera's character's name. Can I just say, ever since I learned back around 2006 or so just how late an addition to the Arthurian legends Lancelot was, that I've come to strongly dislike the character. Nothing to do with this movie in particular. I mean, I'm just saying. It probably contributes to why I liked The Green Knight so much this year. No Lancelot in that movie. Which makes sense if I remember right, he wasn't in the original work that the movie was based on. A good movie, by the way. Check it out. Weird as all hell, but I mean, it's an A24 picture. What do you expect? So Lancelot saves Merlin at this point by way of water slide. It makes sense in context. It's still stupid, but it makes sense. And the bad guys just stand around like mannequins until Mordred yells at them. Honestly, having worked retail, I feel you guys. This scene transitions clumsily into an old British woman almost driving her car off the road and not seeming to notice. Our other child protagonist is in the back, and we learn through rather heartlessly delivered exposition that his father is dead and he and his mom have come from Iowa to Britain. The movie keeps cutting back and forth from where Merlin is to the modern day, kind of randomly from where I'm sitting. I'm not against this as a device for storytelling here. Plenty of movies have used the going back and forth between places and time periods, etc. quite effectively. And in all fairness, I've seen it done worse, too. My big issue is, well, how random it seems. Why the movie switches when it does doesn't seem to have any real relevance to the story here. It just switches like every couple of minutes, like they're afraid we're going to forget that this chunk of the film is taking place in 2 different dimensions. And all this, oh god, we only just passed 10 minutes of a 91-minute movie. I need to start skipping over more stuff than I already am if I want to keep this episode under 45 minutes. Not under 30, though. I need that engagement time to help my channel. Subscribe to my Patreon. Patreon.com/Arkle Studios. Merlin teleports himself to the modern world and almost gets run over, and apparently the mom and the older driver from the other segment just know him. And seem pretty nonplussed about the fact that he literally appeared in front of them in a cloud of purple sparkly CGI. I mean, this will probably get explained to us later, but I feel like for a movie that's largely geared towards a younger audience, that list of things that's going to need to get explained later is already awfully long. Kids are often smarter than movie studios give them credit for, but this is a bit much. I'm almost 40, and I'm not 100% sure of everything that's going on. Though, to be fair, I'm watching the movie after a full shift at work, in the middle of the night, a week later than I meant to, while taking notes, so that might not actually be all on the movie. I'm bad at my job. Anyway, we meet Arthur, Sir Gaiwan, speaking of the Green Knight, though this movie pronounces it Gaiwan, because of course they do, and some other knights who are planning an attack on a gas truck. Yeah, sure, why not? They do so, and the music plays it straight, as if you were watching a straightforward fantasy movie and these knights were attacking a dragon, as opposed to a truck driven by a guy wondering why the hell a bunch of LARPers are clanging swords against his vehicle. Okay, I'll admit it, this part of the movie is actually legit funny. And intentionally so, too. Too bad it's kind of a short sequence. When Arthur, Gaiwan, and the others start to go after a car driven by an elderly couple, it gets back to the dumb when said car almost runs over Merlin, causing him to fall over, exposing his tighty whities. I'm guessing he picked those up on his last trip to the real world from where Mordred's trying to escape. I think this was supposed to be funny. Way to kill the flow there, movie. You were actually kind of interesting for a minute or two. We cut back to one of the young protagonists, the boy from Iowa, who I believe is played by a British actor, and the voice sounds just as bad as you might think it would. Was there any particular reason this kid needed to be American for this story? We cut back to Merlin explaining to Arthur where he is, and it's basically a flashback that's an extended version of the plot summary I gave at the top of the audio segment, and also of the text at the beginning of the movie, which kind of renders the text redundant when you think about it. Or, actually, you know what, even better? This should have just been the opening of the film. Just putting that out there. It's played fairly seriously, which I give the filmmakers credit for, though it is undermined considerably by how ridiculous Mordred looks in his helmet. Which it turns out is the helmet that Tia Carrera has been using to communicate with him by way of the psychic. We get back to the children of this movie, who finally meet each other, almost a half hour in. The boy's American accent continues to be terrible. His name is Richie, forgot to mention that earlier. He's just not a good character. Maybe I could look past some of the rude shit he says. He did just recently lose his father to off-screen parent death syndrome. OPDS, man. It's a real bitch. But that god-awful American accent is just making it pretty much impossible. He almost sounds dubbed. Actually, come to think of it, now that I'm recording this the day after watching it, I'm starting to think maybe he was dubbed. But none of the other characters in the movie so far have had that problem. Dubbed or not, the voice is just bad. Bad. So anyway, Maxwell has a magical gateway in a lab, somehow, and she's working with Mordred as a power grab. I mean, she has enough money to have a fancy lab with armed guards and staff. Pretty loyal staff, as we find out later. So I think she's already doing quite well for herself without risking an alliance with an ancient evil whose name is pretty much synonymous with being a murdering bastard. But I'm sure it makes sense to her. The kids find out about this within minutes of meeting and decide they need to stop her. Which will probably work. This is that kind of movie. Though we have gotten surprisingly little time with the child characters so far, which is a bit unusual for a family movie. So after Arthur jumps into a lake because they didn't have Patrick Bergin for more than a couple of days, to find Excalibur, Merlin has somehow managed to sneak into the same secure lab that the kids have managed to sneak into, despite the multiple guards and gates, and the entrance is far enough away from said gates to need to be driven to. I mean, magic, probably, but it would have been nice if they showed us that. Also, he keeps his robe on under the lab coat he stole to try and blend in. Smooth. Apparently, disguise is not one of Merlin's abilities. Everything seems to be building to a climax here, which is weird because we're less than halfway through, so this means something is probably about to go wrong. And hey, wouldn't you know it, it does, though more for the bad guys. Mordred almost escapes into the modern world, but is blasted back by a combination of Merlin's magic and the kids using a fire hose. Guinevere is able to escape the other dimension, though Lancelot is nearly captured by Mordred's forces and is unable to get through before the gateway closes. Well, closes mostly. Mordred notices a gap in it, as a result of Merlin going weaker, and... Okay, this is a little dark for an ostensibly family picture, but Mordred basically starts killing a bunch of people in his service, mostly if not all women, and sending their ghosts, for want of a better term, through the gap where they fly around and freak out all of Maxwell's employees who are just standing around for some reason before heading off. They manage to find Arthur's Knights in the Woods as they wait for him to return from the Lady in the Lake's realm where he disappeared to earlier in the movie. Or at least I thought it was supposed to be the Lady of the Lake's realm, but it turns out it's just the same realm that Mordred was banished to, and it's all really stupid. This is all in a quest to get Excalibur, which we don't see most of. So yeah, Arthur is basically Sir not appearing in this film for a large chunk of it. Like I said earlier, apparently I guess they were only able to get Patrick Bergin for one day or something. Anyway, the ghosts possess a couple of the knights in a scene that is almost genuinely creepy. Sadly, the choice of sound effects kind of kills it. It sounds like a scream machine from a Spirit Halloween store that's not totally dead, but probably should still have its batteries replaced. It's really a perfect example of this movie's biggest failing that I think can be summed up with one word. Almost. There are many things in this movie that almost work. Jokes that are almost funny. A few fight scenes that are almost engaging, although most of them don't even come close. Characters that are almost likable, horror elements that are almost creepy. And while I was writing that, a bunch of the ghosts, which means Mordred is killing a lot of his own people, while Lancelot is still on the loose, I might add, make it to the town near the lab and start possessing the inhabitants there too. Not as scary as it could be, but points for effort. Also, apparently the children of this movie sleep fully clothed. Guess that saves money on the costume budget, although with Richie... Okay, I don't own a leather jacket, but sleeping in a leather jacket would not be comfortable, would it? Let me know in the comments. Rather than possessing the kids as well, Mordred has them brought to the lab to talk to him, possessing Kate's mother again. Did I mention the psychic's kid was named Kate earlier? Whatever. Point is, this is another scene that almost works. What kills it are two things. Craig Schaefer is just not that convincing as a big magical bad guy. Oh, and also in this movie, Mordred's a sorcerer now. And Richie's pointless and bad American accent. Honestly, I feel like recasting Mordred and just letting Richie be British would improve things a lot here. So yeah, this is when Mordred tries to blackmail the children into killing Merlin for him. Setting aside that even with his weakened powers, Merlin isn't exactly a pushover, and the heaviest weapon Richie has at his disposal is maybe he could throw his Game Boy really hard. The delivery on the line was just... it needed to be either more sinister or more campy. I think either one would have worked. Instead, it was just kind of weak. It felt like Schaefer was doing a bad impression of Dr. Evil from the Austin Powers movies. Well, it does turn out that Maxwell has a weapon that can kill Merlin. Why she didn't use this earlier when Merlin was in her lab, who knows. And she just hands it to Richie and tells him if he's not careful with it, it could start a small earthquake. Why not just get a label maker and put "This is how to defeat us in the climax" on it? But hey, we do finally get back to Arthur, who runs into Lancelot. And they fight, and they fight, and they fight, and they fight. And they also talk while fighting. And it's not as interesting as it sounds, though. This is definitely not The Princess Bride. The fight lasts until they come across some Mordred loyalists that he hasn't killed to turn into ghosts yet, and end up having to put off their fight in order to escape. At one point, they have to jump over a fire pit. Arthur says, "We'll never make it," and Adrian Paul says, "Do you want to live forever?"
This isn't funny!
The kids reach the camp where Merlin, Guinevere, and the knights are at. Turns out only 2 of the knights were actually taken by Mordred's ghost army, which seems like a waste of resources there, while the rest were going to the town. The 2 possessed knights attack for some reason. I think I missed something. But when they get taken down, the ghosts leave their body in a scene that probably would have looked awesome if Peter Jackson were directing this. I mean, we're talking like the Frighteners level of awesome here. This gets Gaiwan to stop griping about being in charge and actually rally the troops, so there's that. The final battle ends up taking place at Stonehenge, allegedly, because I'm pretty sure there are not that many trees that close to the real Stonehenge, but whatever. And they actually show Mordred planting a wet kiss on his mother. Family film, everybody. I mean, accurate to Arthurian lore, as far as I'm aware. I'm not an expert, but family movie. And naturally, Richie doesn't end up using the weapon on Merlin, but I'm pretty sure we all saw that one coming. He does use it on Mordred, though it really only stalls things until Arthur is able to get Excalibur back, causing him and Lancelot to just appear in Stonehenge. Makes it easy. Mordred tells Arthur to give him the sword or Richie's mother dies. And Arthur gives it to him all right. Right through the chest. Because only in fiction does throwing a sword actually work like that. Arthur knights Richie, but not Kate, even though they both helped. Gross. And then he and the rest of the knights, except for Lancelot, decide to just go back to the other dimension, I guess, instead of staying in the modern world, because, like, you know, we're men out of time, but all right. Everyone they take Maxwell with them as a prisoner. Everyone claps, as in actually claps, not like fake Tumblr stories that end with and everybody clapped. And then there's the really yikesy implication that Sir Gaiwan is going to make Maxwell his sex slave at the end.
What?
Random thoughts I had while watching the movie. Rick Mayall would have made a good doctor on Doctor Who. I imagine I didn't need to make that clarification for like 90% of my audience, but, you know, just in case. About 6.5 minutes into the movie, my internet went down for a while, and I couldn't add anything to the Google Doc I use for my show's scripts. I wonder if AT&T was trying to spare me the rest of the movie. Nah, AT&T sucks. They wouldn't do anything so altruistic. I rewatched the Hagen Film Brain crossover after I finished the first draft of this script here. And I'm gonna say, I don't entirely agree that Patrick Bergin was miscast as Arthur. I didn't think he was that bad. Not great, but not bad. But, you know, much like with Rick Mayall, the good that comes from, well, both of them, fails to elevate the movie so much as highlight its failures. Sometimes a good performance can salvage a shitty script, but this is not one of those times. They try, though. They really try. A lot of the time it seems like Mayall and Bergin were the only ones who were trying. And I appreciate that. We learn during the flashback/exposition scene that it's basically Lancelot's fault several of Stonehenge's rocks got toppled, making it look like what it looks like today. What a dingus. This movie continues the grand Paul Matthews tradition of people having just the worst peripheral vision. I wonder if it's a sign they're all in some kind of mirror universe, like with the light sensitivity of people from the Terran Empire on Star Trek. The Merlin killing device, at first anyway, looked to me like an electric shaver with bits of the end taken off. But when I rewatched the Hagen Film Brain crossover, like I mentioned earlier, they pointed out that it really looked more like a hand taser, and yeah, I think that's actually more accurate. No, seriously, at the end, Maxwell, with her hands bound, gets taken along to the other dimension, and Gaiwan has his arm around her and says, "We're gonna have lots of fun," while she looks concerned. What the hell? And now it's time for this episode's FUJK. So that lady in Scotland, props to author Mer Lafferty for that nickname, follows a lot of white nationalists on Twitter. Like, more than a few. And, you know, you can't really say that it's like for keeping an eye on them or for research purposes, because Twitter has this thing called lists that lets you do that without giving the people you want to quote unquote keep an eye on the engagement. And also, like, if you tried to pass it off as saying it's like it's for research, she's been following a lot of these people for years. And what has she done lately that would suggest that she's been doing research on white nationalists? I certainly can't think of anything. And certainly not anything she couldn't have gotten from just reading some books. Yeah, as I'm recording this, I'm still trying to find... Someone took a screen cap of, like, people she followed, and it's, like, listed by the order in which she most recently followed them. And, like the top 5 people were all, like, known white supremacist types. People who write books about how, you know, Muslims are destroying Europe and shit like that. Hopefully I'll find it. If I find it before this episode gets made, I'll send it to the Dropbox folder for the editor to put up, because just yowza. That's not great. That's really, you know, not great. Final verdict. Bless the power of low expectations. My memory of the Hagen Film Brain crossover had me expecting a much more unpleasant experience than I got. This is still not a good movie, mind you, but it has a few moments here and there that make it tolerable. More so than the last two movies in this set, I think. Apart from the usual Paul Matthews tropes of bad slapstick, dubious CGI even for the time, and actors who are way too good for the material they've been given, Merlin the Return suffers from quite a bit of tone whiplash. It seems to want to be both a family-friendly fantasy tale and like a dark Arthurian action story at the same time, and doesn't really succeed at either. Honestly, a lot of the stuff with the children feels kind of shoehorned in, like they were added to the script at the last minute. This is pure speculation on my part, but I think maybe Paul Matthews wanted to make a movie for a slightly older audience. I mean, the implication that the other named female villain, apart from Morgana, was being taken to be, well, let's not sugarcoat it, raped by Sir Gaiwan as punishment for helping Mordred, certainly lends credence to that theory. I'm amazed I'd forgotten about that part from the Hagen Film Brain review. Or maybe I just blocked it out. Because fucking yikes. Come back next year for the next episode of Shameless Cashgrab, which will be for the movie Dazzle. That's just Dazzle. That's just the name of it. Okay. Have fun. Stay safe.